mean, that is the role of the critic. That is phenomenal because that is the absolute point of history. I think Geeta Kapoor's writing of Place for People makes a sort of a sharp intervention with all the art that she herself has perhaps written on. It is a repudiation of her own position of 1977 and 1980, 1981 when she writes Place for People. So here the cultic, the authoritarian voice of the critic is very strong. Now let's look at the other area, which is the mediatic. What do you do in the role of the newspaper? Transparency, reportage. When I began writing in the Indian Express, you saw an exhibition, you went there, you banged it out on the, on the typewriter, and it came out in the paper the next morning. What is the line that belongs to this trajectory? Here you can think of, say, Richard Bartholomew as certainly being one of the most important kinds of critics. He did something similar. He put his entire sort of faith in an artist like Ram Kumar, and he establishes Ram Kumar as, in his view, the supreme sort of abstract painter of India. This is a position of extreme vulnerability. This is the one that you're talking of, Abhay. This is where, and you're talking of Sharmishta, nobody invites you for dinner. You keep the artist at mile because the area of identification cannot be very strong. And you assume a position of a certain authority and power. But you're also vulnerable because you write in a medium like the newspaper where there can be several lines of attack and then your defense. This is completely different from the Rupam, Geeta Kapoor kind of trajectory where you are actually cushioned, I would suggest, and that would lead into academics through the art journal. So this sort of position is one that I think Ashrafi's complaint about what the newspaper has done is to resign this space. This is perhaps a terrible and a very tragic loss. Where does the critic go? Become a very active curator. Befriend the artist, show the work, and put your writing into an authoritative catalogue. Perhaps that's the only way.
Yeah. So you must be glad you made the journey to the superior level.
No, I'm deeply saddened because actually I enjoyed this dialogue. Yeah. It's a very, and let's not forget Girish, Richard Bartholomew writing about Ram Kumar, or Kar Khandalawala writing in the paper about Amrita Shergill, or Charles Fabry writing about Satish Gujral. Today's journalism is tomorrow's history. So that was the making of modern Indian art movements. And they were done with a lot of commitment and passion and a terrible poignant vulnerability.
Yeah, but all the three figures writing about all the other three figures, they are performing the role of the curator explicitly.
No, not
They're
really.
curating their careers.
Perhaps they are not curating the careers, but they are. I think they are steering and they are according the mantle of genius. Almost every one of them accords the mantle of genius. Ram Kumar is spoken of as genius. Kar Khandalawala speaks of the genius of Amrita Shergill. And Fabry certainly says Satish Gujral is a genius of a certain kind.
And that would be stretching the idea of the curator or the meaning of curatorship quite a bit, which you can of course do. Curatorship as a form of criticism and criticism as a form of curatorship. But the gentleman in the front row who now has his bag, would you like to ask your question? All right.
There's no need. Yes. So what's being discussed here is really the role of the critic in society. And my experience is more from the theater side, but I think it applies here also. My feeling is, and feedback, is that a role of the critic is to help make the case for the importance of art and educate the public about art and help inspire everyone, including the artists, about creating beautiful and important art. And of course, it has to be discussed. What is beautiful and important art? But it seems to me a wonderful role of the critic is to get this conversation going in the public sphere and help the culture of a city develop.
Is that also something coming back, in some ways what you're saying links up with the sort of history that Ashrafi was speaking about, and which itself seems to be threatened perhaps because also of the incursion, I think, of the market. This is something I'd like to bring up, because one of the reasons that this publicity has taken over to a degree is that the market has become so important and so prominent in the last 20 years. And there's definitely a coincidence between the way the media has changed, the way the media market has changed, and the way the art market has changed, and how that affects art criticism. And perhaps to link it with what you were saying, till the 70s, there was really this idea that criticism was sort of good in itself because it helped people evolve in some ways through appreciating art into more complete human beings. There was that kind of idealistic view. And so newspapers, I guess, even if the art did not pay for itself, even if people weren't reading that many, there was almost an obligation, would you say, Gayatri, to have an art column in a newspaper. And that has been done away with because we don't have those moral obligations anymore. Is that something you would all agree with or disagree with?
I'd like to sort of see the role of the gallery, because earlier what happened that a critic would write on an artist, and the object of art gradually would become a cultural object. A certain amount of time was involved in it. But here the gallery comes overnight, picks up an artist, and overnight, almost overnight, he or she becomes, his art becomes sort of, quote-unquote market-friendly art becomes very important. So the gallery is also sort of, in this situation of reducing or the role of the art critic playing an important vital role. So that is also an important factor that one, as Abhay said, that the paid art criticism, they are all sort of commissioned by the galleries, and that helps the market to sort of operate. So that is also one reason that puts the critic, the quote-unquote the critic, take him or her the backseat.
Yeah, are there more common questions? Yes, please.
Yeah. My comment is that you should look at what has happened for us in the media, attaching to what Ashrafi was talking about, with all art criticism being taken away from the main magazine, main part of the newspaper, into the supplementary. And the editors of the supplementary and the publishers have a very clear policy that what is in the supplementary has to be light and frothy. And light and frothy means that you cannot actually do a critical review of anything. So what you are going to get invariably is a reportage. Now what happens because of that, especially in my context in Chennai, is that a lot of the activity, which is like follow-up, like assertion coming from various artists, thousands of artists, maybe on a daily basis, goes under the radar for most part of the country. Your art magazines are also very much centered around the rest of India. But there's not much coming in. I remember talking about this when I came to Art Council with Vishwanathan, and we talked with Siddhartha Tagore and you, and and Mr. Tagore at that point of time said, we don't have people. Do you know people who are going to write? There are people here. Ashrafi is here, Sadanand is not in town at the moment. We have Parvati Nair here, who's practitioner who writes, Ranjan Day, people like that. But that kind of space is completely not available for a lot of the artists in this part of the country. And therefore, it means that a lot of the art and the assertions that are being made become completely invisible.
Thank you for that comment. Any others? Yeah, the person to your left.
Oh, you know.